Ken Trahan with Lenny Vangilder. It's our First NBC Bank Weekend Review, brought to you by First NBC Bank with 32 locations throughout the greater New Orleans area and beyond. That's First NBC Bank, proud sponsor of SportsNola.com. It's the Denver Broncos and the Seattle Seahawks in the Super Bowl in New Jersey in 2 weeks, and both of these teams got there in different fashion. The Broncos with a dominating effort, really in control from start to finish. The Seahawks rallied to win and withstood a last-minute drive by San Francisco to hold off the 49ers, Lenny. And you got a matchup here that the odds makers think is about even.
Pretty much. Denver a slight favorite at this point, but it's going to be intriguing. Number one offense in the league, number one defense in the league. Yeah, and you know what happens when these kind of games play out? The other side of the ball is going to be the one that's going to decide it. What is Seattle's offense going to do against Denver's defense? That's probably going to end up being what's going to decide this football game, as opposed to the star matchup, if you will. So we'll have 2 weeks to just break this thing down totally, but a solid effort by Denver yesterday. A great effort by Seattle's defense to get those 3 fourth-quarter turnovers to put themselves in a position to hang on and win that football game. The offense got them the lead, and then they forced the 3 turnovers thereafter in the fourth quarter.
Yep, indeed. Seattle's defense carries the day. Denver's offense carries the day. And Denver's defense did a good enough job against Tom Brady and the New England offense. And, of course, the Seattle offense, as you mentioned, did a good enough job against the 49ers defense, which is awfully good. Maybe the most troubling aspect of the 2 games yesterday were the calls in the Seattle-San Francisco game, all of which went against the 49ers, and at least 3 of which were not good calls at all.
You know, the one play, especially there, the fumble on the goal line that clearly Navarro Bowman has in his possession, can't be reviewed. It's one of those things where, when there's a pile up, you understand, hey, who's got the ball down at the bottom?
He was in the clear with the football. Right. How can every guy miss that?
Yeah, you would think. I mean, these are supposedly the best guys, or they're at least in the top 3. Now, none of these guys, you should mention, none of these guys that you saw on the field on Sunday wearing a striped shirt will be working the Super Bowl. You would think that might be the case. You'd advance guys from conference championship games, but you're not. It will actually be, an all-star crew headed by Terry McAulay, who worked the Saints-Seahawks game 2 Saturdays ago. And actually, I thought that McAulay's crew of that game did a pretty good job. But getting back to what you're saying, that is the one play that we'll be talking about in this game. Even though it wasn't a factor in the game, that will be the one play that gets talked about in this game. And I think you will see the ability to overturn that in replay come next year.
Terrible call on running into the kicker. It was roughing the kicker. Rule is very clear about which foot was hit and was planted at the time. They missed it completely. That's not reviewable either. Instead of a first down and possession and moving the football, they punt, and Seattle scores a touchdown. That's huge. And then the call before the half on Carlos Rogers, a horrendous call for a personal foul when he hits a guy in bounds and pushes him out of bounds. Didn't even hit him, just pushed him out of bounds. Why is that important? Because there were still about 30 seconds left on the clock, and that was a 4th down play that Seattle missed, and San Francisco would have had the ball at plus the 40-yard line. So as a result, you took away a potential field goal there. These are calls that decide games, and I had no rooting interest in the game. They simply shouldn't happen in a game of this magnitude.
Yeah, that's one of those things. I think they're just being over careful, at least in the Rodgers situation. But what was interesting is how they did enforce it. That they chose to enforce it as a post possession foul, if you will, or after the play was concluded, which meant San Francisco already had the ball on downs when the foul was committed.
Kill their field position, though.
Well, you're right, it did, and they would have had a chance, and they elected to take a knee at that point. But unfortunately, we've seen those types of things, happen in game. You can go all the way back. You remember the famous Oilers-Steelers game back in the late 70s, which was really the game that kind of started the discussion of replay, where the Oilers got a horrible call in the end zone with a foot down for a touchdown that they didn't call. So it's always going to be something of discussion in that review, but it's. At least if something comes out of it that there's more ability to reverse things via replay down the road in the case of the Bowman play, then perhaps that's a good thing.
What a great matchup it's going to be in the Super Bowl, and you can't get any better. Best offense against the best defense. Peyton Manning did not do anything, in my mind, to either advance himself or reduce himself. He's one of the greatest ever. He was before, would be after, but in the eyes of some, he moved up another peg. I think that's a bit ridiculous, frankly, but he played flawless football.
He did, and terrific. 400 yards passing was outstanding.
No one's ever done that against New England.
And 500 was it 509 yards they finished with. No one's ever done that against New England either, but at least in the Belichick era. But the the one thing that I guess is part of the Manning debate, if you will, and obviously of interest to people in New Orleans, with Peyton being a New Orleans native, is if you're going to call somebody the best ever, which a lot of people want to anoint Peyton with that, that honor, do you have to win more than one Super Bowl to do it? And this is going to be his chance. Peyton is not the type of guy to shoulder a lot of pressure. I don't think a lot of that stuff matters to him, although obviously, the fact that he's going into his brother's stadium, just as his brother, by the way, came into his stadium 2 years ago to win a Super Bowl, he's now going into his brother's stadium with a chance to win that second Super Bowl. And I think if he does that, much like we saw, the LeBron James discussion a few years ago when he finally got a title, I think you'll see the same thing happen here. Those discussions will be over.
All right, Pelicans back in action, 8-game losing streak. They play at home. I can play Memphis today, first of all, Martin Luther King Day, and an afternoon affair in Memphis, appropriately, where Dr. King was assassinated. And then they come home and play against Sacramento. Losing streak intact, and at this point, you almost hope they lose out. Rumors everywhere now, not just about Eric Gordon, but about Tyreek Evans. And frankly, Lenny, that's really a road they should examine and maybe should take ultimately to try to get themselves out of this cap hell they're in, because they're not going to go anywhere with what they have right now.
Yeah, they're really kind of stuck with some of these salaries that they do have, and obviously some of their at some point, some of their younger players, like an Anthony Davis, you've got, you're going to have to address that when his rookie contract expires, and then that's going to, accelerate his pay rate significantly. So, how do you deal with that? How do you address that situation? The easiest way to do it is through a trade. And, how do you go about that? Well, exactly what gets exchanged there. Are you trying to just take expiring contracts at that point and be free of that money at the end of this year, as opposed to longer term deals like you're dealing with Gordon, with Evans? Always a possibility. You got to have it takes two to tango when it comes to trading. So if you can get the right partner in there and it's the right situation for both teams, then who knows, maybe we will see it happen.
And last but not least, it's Senior Bowl week, so chance to look at prospects up close and personal. You'll be able to read about it, of course, at sportsnola.com throughout the course of the week, and a lot of speculation about who's doing what, and yet Rob Ryan not speaking. Mickey Loomis will speak this afternoon. Again, controlling the message. It's become such a big part of what the NFL is today.
Absolutely. And, it's all about, one or two messengers out there, so to speak. It's fine if they choose to do that. It's, at the end of the day, I think what the fans of this team are concerned about is how are you going to address some of the situations that you've got to deal with over the next 4 months, the draft, free agency, franchise tags, and those types of things. How are those things going to be addressed?
Lenny, it's always a pleasure. Have a great week.
All right, we'll see you later this week.
Don't forget Sports Noah TV tonight, 6 p.m. on WHNO Channel 20. And our thanks to First NBC Bank, proud sponsor of SportsNoah.com with 32 locations throughout the greater New Orleans area and beyond. For Lenny, I'm Kenny. Have a great week, and God bless.